Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is starting to pay compensation to the white farmers who lost their land. The compensation is supposedly for the improvements they made on the land. And the payment is supposed to a total of 3.5 billion US dollars. The agreement was made in 2020, but no single payment had been made yet. But this year, the regime says it has allocated some funds to start making the payments. This whole scheme has been controversial from the word go. While one can understand why the white commercial farmers must be paid compensation, because some of them had made improvements on the land. Indeed, they planted fruit trees, they built dams, and various other infrastructure. Indeed, most of the farmers, when they left, they were forced to leave the farm with no more than the clothes they're wearing and a few other belongings. The cattle, even if they had the crop ready for sale, they were asked to leave everything behind. So compensation was the right thing. What most people find shocking is that the government, in making the agreement with the farmers, agreed that the compensation will be paid by the taxpayer and not the individual farmer who took over the farms. Because most of these farms, although they were supposedly supposed to be used for resettling the landless peasants, only a very few farms were actually used for that purpose. Most of them were taken over by the regime and allocated to the ZANU-PF ruling elite, who took over everything. Everything that was there, the improvements, the farms, the machinery, everything. And the only rational thing to have done then is that those who benefited from these land seizures should pay the farmers, the white farmers who lost their land. Here is President Emerson Mnangagwa on one of his farms. As you can see, stretching right up to the horizon. And people like him would not have paid a single penny for the farms or for any of the assets that were on those farms. And since they're doing so well, why should they not be asked to pay the compensation for the white farmers who lost the farms? It will make a lot of sense. But no, the regime decided that it is the taxpayer who is going to pay. I think what makes the whole thing so annoying is that most of the people who were supposed to benefit from all these farm seizures are still in the rural areas. And the regime is even refusing to give them title deeds to even 1 acre of land in those rural areas. The regime is deliberately keeping the rural people poor. There is no doubt that giving the rural people even title deeds to 1 acre will motivate them to improve the land. They will build a better, a more decent homestead, plant fruit trees, dig a well. All those improvements, they will know that if they should ever decide to leave, they can sell the property and the improvements on it as an ongoing concern. But the regime has stubbornly refused to give them any title deeds, keeping them deliberately poor and allowing them not even a foothold on the economic ladder. There is no denying that ZANU-PF considers the rural areas as strongholds. Ever since country's fight for independence, ZANU-PF has maintained its stranglehold on the rural people. It has never allowed the opposition to operate in the rural areas. They are considered ZANU-PF strongholds, and the opposition are not allowed in. And meanwhile, it has kept the rural people poor for its own political ends. Here is Margaret Dongo talking about this very problem.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. At the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
So now we have got a situation where the former white-owned farms were seized. Most of them were forced off the farms with nothing more than the clothes they were wearing and a few other belongings. All the other assets they were forced to leave behind. And those who benefited from all this looting are now turning around and saying, well, we'll compensate the white farmers. But everyone must contribute, including the poorest of the poor, in the form of taxpayers. And meanwhile, the people who were supposed to benefit from the seized farms are still being kept in the rural areas, denied even the right to own even 1 acre of land. Mnangagwa's vast farms, he has title deeds to that farm. You can bet on that. And so would many of his cronies and party loyalists. And yet the rural people are not allowed to own even 1 acre on which their mud hut stands. If there is justice in this world, this side of the grave, that is one of the areas where it's crying out for justice. The compensation of the white farmers, they have pushed their fight and they're entitled to the compensation. But this issue of the land in Zimbabwe will never be solved until we have restored a sense of rationale in the whole argument. Those living in the rural areas deserve to be given title deeds to at least the piece of land on which their mud hut is built. They are not asking for the vast land that Mnangagwa and company claimed for themselves after seizing the white-owned farms. As for the compensation, they are the victims because when the regime seized the white farms, the country's agricultural sector collapsed, and with it, the economy. And millions of these people are now living in abject poverty because the economy has collapsed. And for them to be forced to contribute the little they earn towards compensating the white farmers, I think is an injustice that cries out to be put right. But the first step in that, addressing that injustice, is that the rural farmers, the rural people, the landless peasants must be given title deeds to the land on which their mud hovel is built. ZANU-PF has no right to hold the rural people to ransom, which is exactly what the regime is doing right now. This injustice must end. As a nation, we can't carry on with this injustice. Thank you very much, and have a good day.